Ukrainians raise their flag in newly liberated Kherson after Russian troops withdraw from the key southern city, with special Ukrainian forces arriving. France begins to process hundreds of migrants from the Ocean Viking ship. It docked in Toulon after Italy refused to allow the vessel to disembark.
US President Joe Biden has arrived in Egypt for COP27 talks, pledging to accelerate global climate action.
The Ukrainian national anthem is sung as the flag is raised in newly liberated Kherson. After Russia's withdrawal from the only regional capital captured since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion in February, locals came out onto the streets in jubilation. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the news, saying that special military units had already entered the city. Meanwhile, in Kyiv, people celebrated well into the night. This is one of Ukraine's biggest strategic and symbolic victories of the war so far. For months, people in Kherson have lived under Russian occupation, and of late, they've lacked key services like running water and electricity. But now, it is once again back in Ukrainian hands. Hundreds of migrants from the Ocean Viking ship are now in France after they successfully docked at the port of Toulon. It took weeks to find a safe harbour for the vessel after Italy initially refused to allow it to disembark there, sparking a row between Paris and Rome. France has now begun to process the people on board. The Director General in charge of foreigners in France said, "For the moment, they all asked for asylum, so they will have interviews with security authorities to make sure they don't represent any security risk, and then interviews with France's Public Office for Refugees to know if their asylum request is justified or not." The French Interior Minister has said the migrants would ultimately be divided among France and 11 other EU countries. But in a perceived retaliation against Italy, Paris announced new border checks.
The arrival many had been waiting for. US President Joe Biden has touched down in Egypt for the COP27 talks. The pressure had been mounting. Biden was expected to announce sweeping green laws after showing up at last year's climate conference relatively empty-handed.
We're investing more than $20 billion in domestic methane mitigation to do things like cap orphan wells, leaking methane, improving industrial equipment in the oil and gas sectors to reduce emissions. All told, these steps will reduce U.S. methane emissions from covered sources by 87% below the levels of 2005 by 2030.
The US, along with the European Union and Germany, have also pledged a package of more than 480 million euros to finance and help Egypt's transition to clean energy. Biden added that the war in Ukraine made it more urgent than ever to double down on climate commitments.
Demonstrators have called on wealthy nations to pay fair compensation for the global impacts of the climate crisis, while protesting outside the COP27 climate conference in Sharm el-Sheikh on Friday. It was one of several small protests which took place around the conference after demonstrations had been slightly muted at the summit so far. Democratic Senator Mark Kelly has won his bid for re-election in the crucial swing state of Arizona, defeating Republican venture capitalist Blake Masters, putting his party one victory away from retaining control of the chamber for the next 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency. Democrats must win either the Senate race in Nevada, which remains too close to call, or next month's runoff in Georgia. At least 12 people were killed when a petrol tanker crashed on a major road and then exploded in Nigeria's northern state of Kogi, according to police. The tanker had a brake failure along a major road, colliding with a vehicle obstructing the highway, causing a fireball. The road has now been cordoned off and authorities are working to identify all of the victims.